Hello, and welcome to the Providence College podcast. My name is Kristen Lanesbury. Today, we're joined by Raul Fonts, PC's Dean of Admission and Financial Aid, along with Sandra Oliveira, Executive Director of Financial Aid. Our subject today will be navigating the admission and financial aid process in uncertain times. Raul and Sandy, prospective students and their families always have a lot of questions about the admission process this time of year, but this isn't a typical year by any means. Can you talk about how the uncertainties related to the coronavirus have changed the admission landscape at PC and at other institutions?
Thank you, Kristen. Yes, I think this is a year like no other. I've been doing this for 35 years and I've never seen an admission cycle impacted so greatly. And certainly coronavirus has had a major impact on students beginning last March when everyone's academic cycle was impacted greatly. Students had to pivot to remote learning and colleges had to change how we communicated with students. That's continued through the fall and it's impacting the class of 25 in that many of them haven't had the opportunity to even visit a college campus. They're having to base decisions on where they're applying on virtual exchanges with colleges, virtual tours, virtual interviews, virtual group information sessions. And virtual is nice, but it's not the same as an in-person visit. A school like Providence College excels in that we have a community that takes a special interest in students. We're a very welcoming environment and we want to work with students individually and want them to understand the type of community that we are. So not having the ability to visit a school like Providence College is certainly impacting us from an application standpoint. It's also been interesting that many of these students didn't even start their academic senior year until later than the traditional start to a senior year. We found out that many of Boston schools didn't start till early October. And New York City public schools didn't start until the 7th of October. So this has delayed the application process altogether. Sandy, do you want to add to from your perspective, the financial aid impact?
Absolutely. I think that families understandably are always concerned about the cost of college, whether we are in good times or bad. And this year, I think that there has definitely been some uncertainty from families about what does it mean for me when I am trying to plan where I'm going to go, what I'm going to look at, and what type of cost of an institution is. And maybe making decisions to rule out an institution based on overall sticker price, when I think families having information that there's more to financial aid and how it all works than just looking at what the sticker and the published price is. And I think that families are looking at that as a way to weed out schools, often looking at some of the benefits that they may be reading on certain headlines about what schools are doing instead of looking individually at an institution and trying to understand what the school has to offer. So decisions, I think, are made very differently. I think that the planning that families may have done and the opportunities to go to high school planning nights and financial aid nights that they've had at schools have also moved to a virtual world. And I don't know that everybody gets as much out of it as they did before. So they are turning their attention to institutions to help answer some of those questions in a very different way. Where Raul has commented about students feeling that individual contact and the special interest we have when students visit campus, I'd have to say that we've really beefed up our virtual communication with families, and we've really been successful in being able to still walk a family through the process and help them understand what their out-of-pocket cost is going to be, and how they can make Providence College a reality for them. And that level of service or the process itself hasn't changed, just making sure that we reach families to let them know that we're here to work through that still with them. No different than we were pre-coronavirus.
Great, thank you, Sandy. And beyond beefing up our virtual offerings, what other steps has PC taken to respond to the needs of families and to be more flexible and meet
I
those
think
needs?
we've done a great deal from the admissions standpoint. We listened to high school counselors and we listened to parents this fall, and they were all telling us that it was taking them longer to get around to applying. So one of the first decisions we made in about mid-October was to extend our early action deadline from November 1st to November 15th, just to give students an extra 2 weeks to complete their essays, to get their letters of recommendation, to get their applications together. High school getting off to a later start, I think, pushed the timeline back for us. We listened to families and we made the decision to extend our deadline. We also offered a free application or an application fee waiver weekend. We allowed students the weekend of October 23rd through the 25th to submit an application without paying the application fee. And it was incredibly successful. We had over 1,800 students apply that weekend. Taking some of that financial burden, I know it's only $65, but I think taking that stress away, again, making us a bit more accessible, was very attractive to a lot of families, and they took advantage of it. And then another thing that we announced around the extension of the deadline was the fact that Providence College was going to cover the cost of all students' books in their first year. So the class of 2025 will not have to worry about covering the cost of books for their first year. So the combination of all of these things, I think we were speaking to access. We were speaking to families and students and telling them that we understand the stress that they're under in going through this college application process. And I think the measures that we took were very appropriate. The feedback we've gotten from both high school counselors, parents, and students themselves was one of relief and appreciation that we took those measures. I don't know if Sandy, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things. And while you talk about the class of 2025 having their first year of books covered, that applies to all students here at Providence. It's not just the entering class. So next year, our 3 returning classes will also have their books covered, which is the case that happened this year as well. I think in this current economy and where families were really struggling with trying to make ends meet, the college stepped up and provided that opportunity for students to receive their required textbooks from our bookstore and to be able to have that. And that really, I think, helped so many of our students that usually use a lot of their own summer money that they save from summer jobs that they may not have had because they couldn't go to work. And so I think that was such an instant relief in the world that we're living in today with our current population. And I'm thrilled to see that that will be extended to help families even further when the students come back. The other thing I think that's important for families to know is with financial aid, when families apply and we consider their situations, the year that they apply with for the 21-22 academic year will be their 2019 income. And that just no longer exists for so many families. In the year that we just had with the class and our returning students now, they were filling it out on 2018, yet 2020 just really changed for families, where we've had families that were furloughed, we had families that lost jobs, we had businesses that, restaurants as examples, that couldn't operate because they needed to shift to either an outdoor service that they may not have been able to do, or they've had to change to takeout, and their cash flow on their businesses and their personal income was greatly reduced. And we have a process to allow families to submit information that gives us a different, almost a different lens on looking at a different year than what they apply for. And the college had been very helpful in providing resources that allowed us to help families even further in the past year, and more importantly, going into next year, that will allow us to look at some of the projections and look at the families in their real situation, as opposed to what they have to do for the purposes of final practice. So we definitely had benefits being able to help families that have some unique and special circumstances. I think the other thing I might like to add as well is that there was a great deal of flexibility this year. Students returned to campus, which was a great thing. I think so many of us were happy that they were here, but I think that the college also provided students with an opportunity to remote from home. For those that it may have been a better option, and that also was something that I think was a significant benefit for some families, where being able to do that and having the students be able to do it from home was also something that the college had provided. It may not be as visible to students, but there is a financial contribution that the college makes to do that. And I think that was also helpful to be able to respond to students where they needed to be.
Thank you, Sandy. Raul, we also have decided to expand our merit scholarship program. Do you want to talk a little bit about that decision and the rationale behind that?
Yes, I think another opportunity that we announced in October was the expansion of our merit scholarship offers. Traditionally speaking, Providence College has been an institution where about a quarter of our admitted students would be offered a merit scholarship, and it's an incredibly competitive selection process. We felt that in this environment, we needed to expand the opportunities for students. Our applicant pool of over 10,000 is very, very deep and very talented, and we feel that this is the appropriate time to go from about 25% of the class to about 30% of the class receiving a merit scholarship opportunity. Those scholarships will range from $20,000 a year to $30,000 a year. And generally speaking, these are the most talented students in our applicant pool. They are generally in the top portions of their high school classes, have a 3.8 GPA or better, and very strong test scores. And you know, the feeling is that the depth of our applicant pool will not water down at all the academic quality of these merit recipients. It will just mean that we will give more students the opportunity to receive a merit scholarship. And I'm appreciative of the administration, the cabinet here at Providence College, for giving us the ability, for supporting us in able to expand our merit scholarships. And you know, and Sandy and I will work together and make sure that that's a part of, you know, the overall financial aid picture, and making Providence College accessible and affordable as much as possible.
How are we accounting for students whose grades suffered as a result of unforeseen circumstances in the spring, or for students who were graded on a pass-fail basis when they're used to being graded on a typical GPA system?
I think, first of all, thank you for that question. I think in our holistic process here, the holistic review process, we take everything into account. But our staff is so experienced, and we've had several discussions about the impact that the pandemic has had on students. And you know, we are going to look at the other 5 semesters of student work and not worry about the pass fail. We'll just make sure that they passed every class, but we'll get our grade point average equivalents from the other 5 semesters worth of work. If the senior year, if there's work from the senior year for us to review, that'll be another quarter or another semester that we will take a look at. But in our holistic approach, we'll look at the entire transcript. We'll look at the strength of curriculum. We'll look at the essays, the supplemental essays, the extracurricular and leadership qualities, the letters of recommendation, and test scores if they have been submitted. So we take a look at the whole picture, and we're going to give students the benefit of the doubt as much as we possibly can.
Great, thank you. Our early action and early decision deadline is quickly approaching. It's November 15th. Is there a benefit to applying early from a financial aid perspective, Sandy?
There is a benefit to apply early only so that you get information early and can make a decision and give you time to work with aid offices. In terms of a financial aid award, that is different if you apply early versus in February. The financial aid is based on students' eligibility, and has nothing to do with the time when they apply. For students, particularly that might be applying for early decision, where that decision is binding, it's really important for students to follow the financial aid deadline so that they get a financial aid award with their letter of acceptance, because the timeline to respond is very quick in terms of depositing. I think it's 2 or 3 weeks behind when the release goes, and students want to have a financial aid award in hand so that they know whether or not it is affordable for them and their family. If it is not, that is the only way that they can get out of that binding offer. So I think it's important that students apply so that they have the right information in hand that gives them the best opportunity to ask questions, the best opportunity to talk to us if there's a change in circumstance. But the amount that a student would receive doesn't matter based on the admission process of when they apply.
From an admission standpoint, there's I think a significant difference between early decision, which is binding, and early action, which is non-binding. Binding meaning if the student is admitted, they are enrolling at Providence College and must withdraw all other applications once they are admitted to Providence College. We're going to probably get somewhere between 400 and 500 combined ED1 and ED2 applications. And we're going to admit at a much higher rate because these students are raising their hand and saying that they want to be at Providence College. Early action is non-binding, so those students have until May the 1st. The only advantage is that they're going to get their decision prior to Christmas, and that will give them 5 months basically before they have to make a decision on where they're going to enroll by May the 1st. So there's a little bit of a difference, early decision being binding and early action being non-binding.
Sandy, a little earlier you mentioned that several colleges and universities are offering creative incentives to get students to apply, including some tuition reductions. What advice would you have for families who are confused by the different pricing structures and trying to navigate this?
Well, I think it's important for them to not only look at the incentives that may be available for reduced tuition, but to look at the overall cost of the institution. I think that it's important for students to also factor in, and this is even without the reductions, their tuition, any fees, room, board. And quite often, families will look at the sticker price. What is the total of all of that's going to cost? And that might be what they use as a reason to apply or not apply to an institution. So sometimes it can be a little confusing when they see that an institution is dropping tuition by 10%. The bottom line is not necessarily sticker price. And I think families need to keep in mind that it is their net price. After I receive financial aid, what is my out-of-pocket cost? And I think that using the tuition discount on tuition is not really something that is always going to benefit a family, because if the cost is lower, the financial aid could be lower as well. So your out-of-pocket cost is really got to be reflective of your ability to contribute. So I think it's important that families look at all of the institutions. I think everybody that has concerns about being able to manage the cost of any higher ed should apply for financial aid. I think that families can use the net price calculator that's available on every website as a way to see what is the likelihood of receiving financial aid and how much you may get. So instead of it being $30,000, maybe with financial aid, it's $15,000. And being able to look at that net price as opposed to the sticker. So even though there might be incentives to get students to apply, the true metric of being able to manage the cost is what is your bottom net price? What is your cost to education after receiving merit or after receiving need-based financial aid from either the grants or student loans, and talking about other things that you might be able to do to bring that sticker price down. So I think sometimes you can get easily confused, most definitely by all the headlines you read about things that are being reduced. But the bottom line is what is my out of pocket? What kind of financial aid am I doing? And what is it that I'm going to have to pay for that institution, instead of looking at the overall sticker price? I think that is key. Applying and getting financial aid responses and merit responses and being able to sit back and compare them is really, I think, a big key part of this, instead of, like I said, just looking at the headlines that you see about reductions and making your decisions from there.
Great. And we touched on this a little bit earlier with early decision, but Sandy, can you describe the timeline related to financial aid applications and when people can expect to hear about aid awards?
Sure. I'm going to put a plug in for our website first. We have all of our application materials. We have deadline dates for the different processes that are listed on our website, with links directly to the forms that students need to complete. And I have to say that completing the applications by the deadlines just provides a student, primarily when you're looking at your early processes, your early decision processes and early action, it really provides you, as I mentioned earlier, with an early indication of what financial aid would look like. The real date that students need to apply and meet those deadlines is really kind of that February 1st, which is for all populations. So that students, we have like I said, we have the links to the forms that we need. And if a student follows the deadlines that are listed, so as an example, we've asked for early decision information to be submitted by November 1st, so that we have information to release with admission. Financial aid awards go hand in hand with offers of acceptance in mid-November. So we need time for students to apply. We need to know who admission has admitted. We need time to review the information and ask questions. And so having those deadlines gives us an opportunity to work with that population of students. For regular decision, for early action, the applicant pool is generally larger. So while admission goes out with their admission decisions prior to the Christmas holiday, we follow very shortly thereafter, just after the new year, with estimate or with financial aid awards for those students admitted during the early action group. And for the regular decision group, that information goes out from admission from an acceptance standpoint in mid-March, and financial aid awards go hand in hand. So we have them ready for the students that have completed all the required application materials and have responded to the questions we may have if there's anything that is missing. So students who file those deadlines will have information very close to the time that they receive an offer of acceptance from the college. And I think that gives them the best opportunity to come back to our office and ask those questions about how did we figure it out, if there's other information that they didn't know to share. Those changes because of job loss or medical or something unique happening to the family, they want that opportunity to be able to have a conversation with their financial aid counselors so that they've got the best information about what aid is available to them before they have to make that decision about attending by the May 1. So we do follow. So if the dates that they apply, we're right in line with admission in terms of responding.
Raul and Sandy, you've provided a lot of excellent information and insight into the admission and financial aid process, particularly in this year. As we wrap this up, what would you say the most important thing that students and their families should know about admission to PC would be?
Well, I think deadlines are really important. And the first major deadline is coming up on the 15th. That's 11 days away. I would tell students and parents not to wait until the 15th. The sooner they get it done, the better they are going to feel about this process. And the second thing I would say is the staff is here to help them. The admission staff, while not all of us are working in the office, we're accessible. They can reach out. They can ask us questions. They can email us. They can ask us to give them a call. We are available to help, to assist them with answering any questions they might have about the admission process. And I think Sandy would echo those sentiments from the financial aid standpoint.
I think it's also important that the student is involved in the process. That's one of the things is we find sometimes that there's sometimes parents will connect with us and the student isn't aware of some of the circumstances that are going on. And it makes it very difficult for us to be able to navigate through when the student is ultimately the one that's here on campus and we're trying to work through that process. The other thing that I would like to add to it that I think that families should know, financial aid is a tricky thing, and I completely understand that, sharing your circumstances about your income and your assets and what you may have in savings and affordability is a really, really tough thing for families to communicate. Yet it's so important for us to understand the full picture. And quite often we will get students or families that will fill out the financial aid applications and they don't take the opportunity to write special circumstances. They don't take the opportunity to share what's really going on in their households that may impact their ability to manage the cost. And those things are truly important to do. We will reach out to families and we'll note on those that have indicated to us something changed. And we may not be able to respond on the initial award, but it's invited us to ask and have more dialogue with the family if we see in their comments or their situation that something has impacted their ability to do it. So I would tell families, let us know as much as you can about your ability to do this. The forms are confidential. They come to our office and we read them all. And I think that is a really important thing if you're really looking at trying to maximize the resources that are available to you to make Providence College or any other institution affordable. You need to let us know what's going on in your households.
Raul, Sandy, thank you so much for bringing us some clarity in these very unclear and uncertain times. If you're interested in learning more about PC's admission or financial aid processes, please visit admission.providence.edu. Thank you for joining us today. You can subscribe to the Providence College podcast at all the usual places, and they're also available on the college's YouTube channel. Feedback is welcome at podcast@providence.edu. Thanks to our producer, Chris Judge. I'm Kristen Lanesbury. Until next time.